The XFC lightweight and welterweight finals are set. Jorge Masvidal's Gamebred FC has made some major announcements this week. Plus Friday, LFA 109, and there's UFC Fight Night on Saturday. Welcome to Cage Minds MMA show. I'm Micah Frankel. Let's get to the first topic today, XFC. They were on Fox Sports 2. Yeah, I bet it's been a while since you watched an MMA event on Fox Sports 2. But that's the new home for the XFC. And if you don't have Fox Sports 2, maybe you have HBO Latino, because apparently you can watch the events there later. A full night of action, about 6 hours and all, starting off with not the prelims, but the XFC Young Guns series. Yes, the Young Guns series, where you get to see those prospects in action first off. So we'll start there and go to the co-main event. Ending up winning the submission of the night, you had Cody Lane against Orlando Ortega. And about 90 seconds in, Lane decides he wants to put this fight on the ground, does so, gets into the half guard, and then jumps out of the half guard, jumping around the top side of his opponent and taking an armbar home for the submission victory inside of the first round. And then in the main event, it went all 3 rounds, back and forth. Controversial in the split decision, as Davy Young has handed his first loss to Jake Kazareski. Kazareski, for my money, actually got beat up a little bit more. It seemed like he was landing some power punches, but when you look at the visual damage, the strikes that Young was landing seemed to be doing damage. Controversial one there. We move up to the main card, and as I said, we know who's meeting in the lightweight and welterweight finals. Start off with the welterweights. LaRue Burley, a 3rd round TKO. Knockdowns in the 1st and 2nd round of Bradley Desir to move on to the finals. The co-main event would see Bobby Nash against Ryan Dixon. Who would meet Burley there in the finals? It was 3 knockdowns inside of 1 round, and the streak of first round TKOs continues for Bobby Nash. Ends up getting it done with a 4-punch combination, left hooks and right crosses. So you'll have Burley, Nash in the welterweight finals. Lightweight, advancing earlier in the night, Demonte Robinson by a unanimous decision. Fast forward to Kurt Hullabah versus Jose Verdugo, and it was one-way traffic as Kurt Hullabah lit up Verdugo. Every strike I think he threw, it landed. Lit up Verdugo into the first round. No clue how the Mexican fighter was still standing after 5 minutes. We get into the 2nd round, and it was 1 straight left down the pipe, and the TKO victory for Kurt Hullabah. Kurt Hullabah, Demonte Robinson, your lightweight finals. And in the main event, it was Jose Quinones, UFC vet, against fellow UFC alum Andrei Sukumtov. Sukumtov, back at XFC 43, got a decision win over Guillermo de Souza. And in this one, it would not go Sukumtov's way. The Mexican fighter Quinones would be able to battle his way inside, and 4 takedowns over 3 rounds leads to a 30-27 unanimous decision. XFC on Friday night was your MMA action, actually for the weekend. Kind of a slow weekend. Hope everybody enjoyed their Memorial Day, and thank you to everyone that's ever served. On to some news to throw out. If you guys are longtime fans of Bellator, and I'm talking about old school Bellator, you'll remember the original announced team, Sean Wheelock and Jimmy Smith. Jimmy Smith has also spent some time with Bellator and moved around. Bring up his name because if you haven't heard, he has a new job, and it's worth mentioning. MMA fighter, MMA analyst, now WWE broadcaster. Jimmy Smith getting that opportunity. You can now see him on Monday Night Raw. That's just a different one. One Championship has made a huge announcement. We know there is a Road to One series. They have a heavyweight tournament currently going on in the United States, being facilitated through RUF. That's Ringside Unified Fighting out in Arizona. That's one heavyweight tournament. The next one will be a European series. France, Amsterdam, many of the countries in Europe. There will be another Road to One heavyweight series going on. And Jon Jones has a new agent. The former UFC light heavyweight champion, considered the greatest light heavyweight of all time. It's been long awaited, his move up to the heavyweight division, and those contract negotiations with the UFC have not went well. It's went so bad that Dana White has given up on Jon Jones, has given up on the negotiations, has given up on the prospect of Jones ever fighting again. A lot of these, I feel like, are negotiation ploys and tactics. But it was interesting to note that a couple months ago, Jon Jones did separate from longtime manager Mel Kikawa. I believe you could look at what he's done as a classical sports move, not really with an agent, but usually what a team does with a coach. Kawa had been the longtime agent for Jon Jones, so he had a long-time relationship, and also with being a member of Front Row Management, has many fighters in the UFC, so he has continual correspondence with the UFC. So you have that same voice being heard all the time. Jon Jones has went in another direction, and now advising him will be Richard Schaefer, who has worked with some of the biggest names in the boxing world. Floyd Mayweather, Canelo Alvarez, Oscar De La Hoya. Over the last 20 years, Schaefer has helped make some of the biggest matchups in boxing come to fruition, and hopefully, you would think, just with a fresh voice, a fresh idea and perspective on the situation, that maybe that could lead to a new constructive back and forth, and maybe we'll actually get to see Jon Jones make that heavyweight debut. Dana recently said that Jon Jones isn't ready to fight. I translate that into Jon isn't ready to fight at the number that's currently listed on his contract, or the little bit we're willing to increase that to. Jon Jones followed up by saying he himself is not ready yet to fight at heavyweight and could need yet another year of training. I think we're seeing a lot of banter back and forth, and it's a lot of show. If they can compromise and have some positive interaction, I think sooner than later we will get Jon Jones at heavyweight, and hopefully a fresh voice who has helped make some big combat sports fights happen in the past is just the new ingredient to this recipe to lead us to a fight that we're all hoping to see. Some big news from Jorge Masvidal. Gamebred FC 1 has been announced for June 18th in Biloxi, Mississippi, and Jorge Masvidal is bringing us some familiar names right off the bat. The main event is going to see MMA pioneer about 70 fights under his belt altogether. Charles Crazy Horse Bennett against Jason Knight. Knight has bare knuckle boxing experience and is a UFC vet. Just fought in Mexico a couple months ago, returning to MMA. And in the co-main event, also some familiar names. You have UFC vet Brock Weaver, who also in Mexico picked up a decision win victory, that Icon Fighting Federation that you can see on UFC Fight Pass. He's going to be taking on LFA vet Brandon Jenkins. Jenkins coming off winning a 165-pound catchweight title on the Cage Aggression promotion. It's going to be some interesting action. Can't wait to see what bare knuckle MMA looks like. I feel like there's some interesting components taking off the gloves. We know the intricacies of the defense, how that changed boxing to bare knuckle boxing. And we know that defense changed a lot from MMA to boxing with the smaller gloves. You take away those gloves, you add in the kicks. If you've seen Lithway, the bare knuckle Muay Thai, you know how devastating that is because it's so much harder to block, and it's so much more interesting to see how the grips will be adjusted for the jiu-jitsu. It's going to be so much easier for these guys to sink in their submissions, talking about the chokes and the arm bars, anything that uses the hands, because now you don't have the wraps, so it's much more like what the fighters are used to training with. The UFC has had a plethora of fight announcements made this week, and let's get to them. We'll start off with a late adjustment to this weekend's Fight Night card, where Nate Landwehr is out, and Makwan Amirkhani is now going to fight LFA call-up Kamula Kirk. Then we move on to where Yancy Medeiros versus Damir Hazic has been rebooked, along with the announcement of Nicolas Dabe versus Sergey Khodyanko being added to the UFC Fight Night on June 26th. Michel Pereira versus Nico Price, a welterweight matchup, has been added to UFC 264 on July 10th. Max Holloway versus Yair Rodriguez has been announced to headline UFC Fight Night on July 17th. Anthony Hernandez is out, and Pua Soriano will now be facing Brennan Allen at the UFC Fight Night on July 24th. Carol Rosa is out, and Sijara Eubanks will now be facing Priscilla Cachero on the same fight night that has added Shamil Abdurakhimov versus Chris Daukaus. That one's a heavyweight bout. Those are both on the UFC Fight Night for July 24th. Kang Ho Kwan versus Hani Yahya, and Du Ho Choi versus Danny Chavez, both are featherweight matchups, have been added to the UFC Fight Night on July 31st. And my apologies, that Kang Yahya fight is a bantamweight matchup. Victoria Laredo and Melissa Gatto, they've been added to the UFC 265 card on August 7th. That's a women's flyweight bout. Talita Santos versus Mandy Bohm, also in the women's flyweight division, has been added to the UFC Fight Night on August 14th. Mana Martinez, who recently got his UFC contract on Dana White's Looking for a Fight from Fury FC, is going to make his Octagon debut against Jesse Strader on the UFC Fight Night August 21st. And Dustin Jacoby versus Askar Morhav, a light heavyweight contest, has been added to the UFC Fight Night on August 28th. Another big weekend of MMA action is ahead of us, and we'll start off with UFC Fight Pass and Friday night, where LFA 109 is taking place in Shawnee, Oklahoma. That one, the main event, lightweights, Terrence McKinney against Michael Elaire, and they're both finishers. McKinney made his promotional debut, LFA 106, a 17-second knockout. In all, his 8th win in the first round and his 5th inside of a minute, where Elaire comes in off of back-to-back first round rear naked choke victories. You have a co-main event where Askar, who has incredible boxing, 11-1 record, takes on Justin Wetzel. Wetzel 6-1 and called for this fight. Askar already signed to the UFC, but an issue in his pre-fight medicals ended up negating that signing, so you know he's already on the radar, and that's why Wetzel wants this opportunity to take that momentum. And in the feature fight, we have Edwin Cooper Jr. from the Jackson Wink Academy, 3-1 against unbeaten Brazilian Robinson Jr., 3-0. All three are finishes. Cooper Jr., incredible wrestling, and that striking continues to develop, so a top prospect coming out of that feature fight. Also on UFC Fight Pass, following that LFA card from Vancouver, Canada, you have Battlefield Fight League 67, 2 title fights, heavyweight and welterweight title, and then preceding that event, which will be Saturday morning for us here in America, about 4 a.m. start time in the East, you have Eternal 60, that's MMA action coming from Perth, Western Australia, where it looks like main event featherweight title fight. After a week off, a whole week, the UFC is back. UFC Fight Night on ESPN Plus, and it's a big one. Heavyweight main event, UFC Fight Night, Rozenstruik versus Sakai. two big strikers. It's number 6, Jairzinho Rozenstruik, against number 9, Augusto Sakai. Rozenstruik comes in, 10 wins by knockout, 7 in the first round. Well, Sakai, 11 wins by knockout, 6 in the first round. Rozenstruik, a lot more power, looking to knock your head off with every strike, and he has a traditional Dutch kickboxing style. Well, Sakai, a little more Muay Thai, a little more work in the clinch, will only use his elbows, work those knees in tight, and he has a much more steady work rate. Even though he only has one less first round knockout, you just feel that Sakai starts off a bit slower. The co-main event, you got number 8 ranked Walt Harris against number 11 Marcin Tybura. Harris in all 13 knockout victories, and 11 have come in the first round. While on the other side, Tybura, the Polish fighter, a 4-fight win streak, 8 knockouts, 6 submissions, a much more diverse skill set. And we've seen recently that Achilles' heel for Harris has been getting taken down and getting put on his back, unable to get back to his feet, unable to put up submissions. So you can understand that the path for victory here for Tybura is going to be looking to put Walt Harris on the ground. You also have on short notice for this one, Roman Dolidze, who's coming down from light heavyweight, his second time at middleweight, is going to be jumping in to take on Loreno Starpoli, who's moving up from the welterweight division, who's 9-3. You can imagine that Dolidze is going to have a strength advantage, but how is the cardio going to play into this one? Because you would feel that Starpoli, coming up from 170, is going to have no problem going all 3 rounds. The most overlooked fight on this main card that deserves attention has got to be the welterweight matchup. Santiago Ponzinio, 27-4, against unbeaten 10-0 Miguel Baeza. I've heard from people that have trained with Baeza in the gym. The kid is incredible. There is a reason at 10-0 why this young Puerto Rican is being given such an opportunity against the Argentine who has been solidified. You have to remember that a 7-fight win streak up into 2018 had Santiago Ponzinio on the cusp of being in title contention. But injuries and whatnot, we didn't see him for over 2 years, and then in January, Ponzinio returned, getting knocked down the first round by the leech Li Jingling. So a lot to make up for when there was so much on the line in 2018 when Ponzinio was forced away from the sport. Baeza, so young, so talented, so much potential. He's 3-0 so far in the UFC, and 2 of them are huge quality wins over solid veterans. Wins over Matt Brown and Takashi Sato. Sato in himself, 20 professional fights, and we know Brown well over 40. So to be able to beat guys with that much experience, it really says something about Baeza to me. You also got to look forward to, on short notice, LFA middleweight champion Gregory Rodriguez jumping up to take on Dusko Tordich, and Tom Breeze, Antonio Arroyo. Both those middleweight bouts. This main card is a lot of fun for UFC Fight Night exceptional matchmaking. On the prelims, that featured prelim, I mentioned it early, it's the fight on short notice. Camilla Kirk jumping in to take on Makwan Murakami. Murakami, 16-5, 11 finishes, 10 in the first round, and 9 have been submissions. Not to mention an 8-second win by flying knee. Kirk, back-to-back TKO wins, and he has 11-4 record, 100% finishing rate. A solid jiu-jitsu base. His striking has come together, and he has that pressure style to break guys down. In the heavyweight division, Tanner Bossier is going to be taking on Elaire Latifi. This is Latifi's second time at heavyweight, and I like this matchup a lot better than his debut. Bossier, one of the smaller heavyweights on the roster, coming in around that 230 mark. Latifi may actually have the opportunity in this matchup to get on the inside and use his power wrestling, while on the other hand, Bossier is going to have a giant advantage with his striking, with his speed, and he's been able to use that for knockout victories in the octagon. So 2 completely opposite styles that I feel like either way, the winner will do it in dominant fashion. with their backs against the wall, both coming off of losses. Two top featherweight prospects are going to be meeting. Youssef Zalal, incredible Muay Thai striking, against Sean Woodson, the Milwaukee fighter with incredible boxing attributes. And the fight that is most being overlooked on this card, it's the opening fight of the night. Claudio Pulis versus Jordan Levitt. Levitt, nicknamed the Monkey King. And that's because of his funky grappling style, technical submissions, 4 submission victories, all in different forms. The guy can transition from submission to submission flawlessly, and won his debut in the octagon by epic knockout from Slam. On the other side, Pulis is returning to the UFC, hasn't fought since September of 2019, been away. The Peruvian is 2-1, but his first victory in the octagon came by knee bar. So 2 fancy, savvy ground fighters are going to meet in that opening one, and I can't wait to see it. Don't forget to visit CageMinds.com and keep up with us on social media. Cage Minds Combat Sports News is the Facebook page. On Instagram, it's CageMinds_CSN. And on Twitter, @CageMindsMMA. And check out Micah Frankel's Cage Minds everywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. Thanks for joining me today.